My cousin's daughter, who is in elementary school, or was at the time that this thing happened, was really getting into writing stories. And so I was scrolling through Facebook, and my cousin's wife posted this thing saying, "Hey, our daughter, this is what happened today. She started crying. She was writing her story and she was crying." And my cousin's wife asked her daughter, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And she said that, like, one of the main characters in her story that she was writing had passed away, and she was crying because it was so sad. And my cousin's wife said to her something like, "Well, why don't you just change the story and make it so that that character doesn't pass away?" And her daughter said something like, "I can't change the story. That's just, I'm just writing the story. It just is." Something to the effect of like, "I can't change the story. That's what it is. That's what happens. I'm just writing down the story that's there." So, and it's fiction, to be clear. This was a fictional story. And it made me think of things I had heard about. Who is it? Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol. And how, when he was writing this story of the Christmas Carol, he made it sound like these were real characters that he was tapping into, that he was just somehow tapping into this. I'm just writing down something that's already there to write down. Like, it already exists out there. I just have to get it on the paper, and treating them like characters that he would visit with. Although I think he said, like, he doesn't feel like he ever saw these characters, but just there was some sort of aspect to him writing A Christmas Carol that made it seem like these characters existed somehow in existence, and they were just coming to him and letting him know how to write about them. Like, like, as vague and as weird as that sounds, like, that's as vague and as weird as I think he experienced it to be. It's almost like, if it hasn't happened to you, it's really hard to explain. Um, but the same thing happens to me. I mean, I haven't drawn a picture for a while. Like, I've doodled, but I used to just like draw pictures and give them to people, or draw pictures and keep them in like an art notebook. But what happened to me is, before I would draw a picture, I would get a fully formed image in my mind. And then all I had to do when I had the paper in front of me was just not outline it, but just, it was almost this process of like, okay, so now I just need to transfer that picture onto paper. And as I would draw, I would just, of course, use pencil first, because it was like an experiment of like, okay, if I draw this line here, nope, that doesn't match the picture in my mind. No, this, like, it was this process of trying to transfer what I had seen in my mind's eye onto the paper. A very clear example is once when I worked at an office supply store in my early 20s, I was just working hanging out at the cash register, and a song was playing. It was it was called Zephyr. I think it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it was the end of the song, like an instrumental. I could hum it out to you, but I won't. But it was like the end, the last few moments of that song, and they're like this really cool. I don't know. It was just a very uh, it captured me. The sound captured me, and I was listening to the end of Zephyr by Red Hot Chili Peppers. In the musical moment, all of a sudden, almost like downloaded into my mind, was this fully formed image of a Pegasus, like a winged horse just coming down, and like the wings were out, and it was almost like it went with that music. And I went home and immediately, as soon as I had time, got out my art notebook and just worked on, like, okay, I'm drawing that picture. No, that's not quite it. No, that's not quite it. Erase, 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 try again. And it was just this process of taking what had come to my mind and getting it on paper. And this is coming to mind now, today, because a couple days ago, I was looking out the window of our house where we live, and I was looking out at a field that I've looked at many, many times. Sometimes there's deer out there, sometimes there's turkeys, sometimes there's a neighbor dog looking for scraps of food. But sometimes there's nothing. But I always feel like there are certain times where I look out that window and I just feel like there is something out there, even if I can't see it. One time I felt that very strongly and I couldn't see an animal or anything out there, but then later it turned out there had been a fox. So anyway, all that to say, the other day I was looking out the window. It was just after sunset, so kind of like just after golden hour. And I was looking out, and of course, it was empty. And all of a sudden, like, it was almost like a movie playing in my mind. So it was almost like, kind of like how I've described before about like having memories, but they're not my memories. They're someone else's, or they're of something that's already happened, or there's something going to happen. Sometimes it's not about real life at all. Sometimes, like this the other day, I had a full little scene play out in my mind, almost like I had seen a movie, but I'd never seen anything or read anything like this. It was this whole little strange story of, looking out at a field and seeing something and it being kind of magical and mysterious and slightly eerie. And the whole story from beginning to end, like a short story, just played in my mind. And I was like, oh, I love this story. It's like, I loved it. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. And so today, I had a day off work and I was just feeling like, I don't want to just read. I don't want to just lounge. And, there's certain chores that are around the house that have been, it's a long story, we've had to put off for a little while. So I was like, I don't want to just read. I don't want to just, like watch YouTube, even though those things are fun. But I felt this burst of like, I just want to be creative. I want to be creative. And so I was like, I'm going to write down that story that came to mind. And of course, all the thoughts came to me that were like, you're not a writer. You don't know how to write stories. I've written blog posts before, and they, same thing happens with any blog post I've had. It literally downloads into my mind. Say it this way, plan it out like this, and then I just have to type it out, do some editing, because the first run through isn't always the ideal way to write something down. But I've had that with nonfiction writing as well. So, but I'd never just, as far as I can remember, except for like in childhood or like in school when you had to write a story for creative writing or something, or poetry class. All that to say, it had been a long time. I don't think of myself as someone that just writes short stories. So I just thought like, well, why not? I can't get this thing out of my head. So just write it down like a short story. And I was like, it's not going to be very good. It's not going to match the image I had in my head. It's not going to convey the feelings or the vibe that I want to communicate. And I was like, it's your day off. It won't leave your mind. Just write it down. See what happens. So I sat down and it took me, I think from beginning to end to where I got it to where I liked how it turned out. I think it took a couple hours or a few hours, but honestly, I love it. I love this little story. It's kind of a creepy little story. And I love it. I've literally been reading it over and over and over again and being like, I love this story. I love this story. But it got me to thinking like, where did I get it? It just came from something I do every day, most every days. Look out the window, see if there's any cool animals out in the field, or just enjoy how beautiful and peaceful it looks out there, or mysterious it looks out there, and then just carry on with my day or evening or whatever. But this time when I did that, a whole story came into my mind, beginning to end, like a scene. And I just had to write it down, and it took a while. It was hard to do, to get all the wording to match how I felt and how I wanted this story to feel. Anyways, this got me to thinking about my cousin's daughter and how I don't know if she's still writing stories, but when I thought of her, I'm like, that's how so many authors talk about their fiction stories, that it's like they're tapping into this story that is out there, and then they're just writing it down. Like the perfect example of my cousin's daughter who was crying because it turned out the story that she was writing had one of the main characters pass away, and she felt that it was so sad, but she could not change the story, she said, because that's not how the story goes. It's just fascinating to me how creative ideas come to us. And I don't know, maybe if you're someone who does either drawing or painting or writing stories or even writing nonfiction blogs or articles, or even ideas for, this can happen with business ideas. This has happened to me with different online business things that I've tried. I just will be hanging out or I'll be doing something else and an idea will just download into my mind, like a fully formed thing. I don't know if it's this way for everybody, but I feel like I've heard a lot of people talk about this. So that's why I wanted to put this out here and start the conversation for those of you out there who have had ideas come to you. Where did you get the ideas for either the picture, the painting, the drawing, the fiction story, the nonfiction article or essay or business idea? Or even an idea for something to try for work, like I've had things like that too, where something will just download into my mind of like, oh, here's an idea of something to try, for your career or whatever. So let me know what your experience has been with this, because I am curious, how common is this? Or is it tied to specific personality types? I don't know. So let me know. I want to know, where do you think your creative ideas come from?